It is now my pleasure to welcome back to the program three-time 20-game winner, World Series MVP, among his other accolades. He is Curt Schilling. Curt, good morning. How are you?
What's up? How you doing, Rick?
Hey, man, good to see you. Before we dive into more important matters, I want to get your thoughts on a little disagreement that my producer and I were having in the last segment. We were talking about baseball rules changes that we would like to see. And he likes Rob Manfred, the idea that Manfred floated out a while back about the golden at bat.
Oh, God.
Curt, my position is it's a terrible idea, but I figure we'll let the real expert weigh in.
I couldn't have said it more succinctly. It's a terrible idea. Let's just start selling raffle tickets and, dunk tanks and all the things that go with the carnival if we're going to start doing that kind of thing. Come on. I mean, that's gimmicky to a degree that I can't even. I honestly thought it was like an April Fool's joke the first day I heard it.
All right, Tim wants to know one more opinion there since you came in and took my side. Tim wants to lose the runner at second to start the 10th inning.
Stupid.
Yeah.
Stupid. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're unanimous on that one. Let's get back to real baseball. All right, Curt, look, Red Sox, let's start Rafael Devers in a move that, shocked, I think, a lot of people within baseball, going to the San Francisco Giants for a package of younger players. The Giants are going to take on the remaining $250+ million on his contract. Curt, obviously things between Devers and management got to a point where they just decided that regardless of how good he is on the field, they just didn't want to put up with him anymore. What is your take on the situation as we've seen it develop here, the issues that he's had with management?
Well, so I have a podcast now called The Complete Game, and a couple episodes ago, my oldest son and I do it together. We're talking about this, and he had actually mentioned Devers as a guy to move at the deadline. I wasn't as all in on it, but since it's happened and the dust has kind of settled a little bit, I'm playing both sides of the fence in a couple different different angles. I think the Red Sox screwed this up from day one. I think the miscommunication or lack of communication. Listen, I'm of two minds. I think that there's the Belichick approach, which is the logo matters more than the man. Shut the hell up and do your job. And then there's the inclusive guy who reaches out and the Terry Francona, the guy who says, hey, listen, I care what you think, and all the things that go with that. And this could have all been avoided, I think, in a lot of ways, with some talk up front that before the Bregman signing. We're clearly well past that. The things that I've started to hear since the deal, I tend to take with caution, because I've been the guy on the other side of this where you hear, I can't tell you, Ricky, over 20 years, how many guys I played with or played against who I heard or read about were horrible people, and turns out it was all bullshit. Now I'm hearing he wouldn't do charity stuff and he refused to do this and that. A guy, when you read something like that to fans out there, sometimes it might be they asked him to go sign autographs one day and he had a personal commitment. He couldn't do it. So then somebody in front office said, oh, he doesn't do anything for charity. That could be the rumor. I don't know. So, but the big one I read was the Ortiz comments, who I've kind of trusted implicitly through this, both in let's back up. They asked him to change positions, right? This is not Little League, right? This is not the Bad News Bears and Tanner asking Engelpuke to go from catching to right field or any of that stupid stuff. This is a big deal in the sense that, guys it's hard to do at the big league level. You can't just move to first base. Some guys can, whatever. He could have handled it differently. He could have responded differently. He could have done things differently. They all could have. But at the end of the day, you're talking about a team that just saved $250 million. I disagree. That $250 million wasn't going to stop them from spending. If you believe that they have an unlimited budget, which a lot of fans believe they do, and they've acted like. So it wasn't a salary dump in that sense. They weren't trying to move a bad contract, unless they believed he wasn't the guy they signed, and they didn't want the long-term commitment. And they saw him, he's put on a little weight since he became the DH. There's a lot of discipline around being a good designated hitter in the big leagues. People don't understand it's not an easy job, and there's so many little things that go into this. He wasn't a very good third baseman. Why didn't he get better? You can get better defensively, and that a lot of that has to do with work habits and discipline and things like that. His metrics were horrible. They didn't get any better. So it kind of pulls at me from all angles. I guess the when I look now at the most important point of the deal for me, it's how the Giants got a potential Hall of Fame level bat without hurting their roster.
Yeah, and they certainly did that. And I guess I don't understand the urgency from Boston's standpoint. They coming off a sweep of the Yankees. There's maybe a little bit of wind at their sails.
They're not a playoff.
If you are,
but Ricky, they're not a World Series contender as the roster is currently built, in my opinion. So I that's the least damaging angle for me, and it's, we live in a what have you done for me lately? They just swept the Yankees. Devers hit a game-clinching home run in the final game. They're finally over 500. They've won 6 in a row. I think they gave up 4 runs or 6 runs over whatever. I didn't look at this roster as a team that was looking at a potential World Series trophy in that sense. So that didn't bother me. I think that, the Harrison pickup, potentially a top of the rotation arm, but that's a whole different conversation about how pitching in baseball has changed so dramatically now. But with Crochet, that's your play-in guy, right? You make the wild card, you got a 1-game play-in, you're going to give the ball to one of the best arms in the game. But who starts game 1 of the series after that? I don't know that they're as constituted. I don't know that's a big deal. And also, for me, with the Red Sox, moving Devers gives them Anthony and Mayers, Campbell now get all their at-bats. And I believe those 3 guys are legit, and I believe that they're potentially able to make up the production loss. But I'm not worried about that whole momentum and what they've done recently thing.
Curt, another thing we've been talking about on this program recently is some of the off-the-field baseball stuff. There was a big flap with the pride flag being shown at Citi Field during the national anthem at a Mets game. The Dodgers have been criticized on the other end. The Dodgers have been criticized for not issuing any kind of public pronouncements about ICE or deportation of illegal immigrants and things like that. Curt, where do you stand on the issue of professional sports and how much or how little teams should play into whatever is going on within the culture or outside of the game itself? Is there any room for those kinds of things in baseball?
You know what, Ricky? It's a sign of the times. It's lazy, ignorant media is what it is. The sport creates enough news. You don't need the other stuff. And listen, thank God there was no social media when I played, because I don't know that I would have been able to last longer than a year in the big leagues. But the fact of the matter is, fans don't go to games to see and hear that sort of stuff. You're talking about the pride flag and all this other stuff. The people that make up the baseball audience in the stands at games are probably 80 to 90% not those people. And you're kowtowing and tailoring yourself to a marginal group of people. And here's the thing, like I said, live and let live for I don't care about any of that stuff in the sense that, especially as it relates to my sports. And I think we've seen enough teams get burned by, you remember you had a couple years ago when the Rays wore the patch, and it wasn't the story about the game wasn't the patch. It was the three guys that didn't wear it that everybody focused on. But it's a lazy media. It's a lazy media. Like I said, there's enough story inside of baseball rather than bring this bullshit in. Just play the game, talk about the game. There's enough amazing human stories and all the things that go with that to make up. But it's basically lazy sports media and lazy beat writers.
I like sports better, Curt, when they're an escape from all of the shit that we deal with.
That's what everybody likes them for. People don't go don't go to Citi Field to see the pride flag. Nobody does. Nobody in the world has paid $35 for a ticket saying, I'm coming here today not to see the Barry Bonds award show or anything. I'm coming here to see the pride flag for 3 seconds in right field. That's stupid.
Are they doing it just to cover their ass so
yes.
nobody can tell them that they're intolerant or what have you? Just checking a box, really?
One of the absolutes in sports that I learned over my time is the only thing a billionaire owner hates more than losing money is bad press.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And it's become so huge. We were talking about Pride Month on the show, NFL teams. I think we're down to maybe around 5 NFL teams that haven't issued some sort of Pride Month statement, right, indicating how virtuous they are.
That's why I love my Steelers.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, there are a handful of teams. That's it, really. Curt, one of the things that's happened since the last time I had a chance to talk to you, Pete Rose, the lifetime ban lifted. Were you surprised that they did that? And, what chance do you give Pete Rose of being elected by one of these committees at some point over the next, I don't know, decade?
Well, I'm not surprised by the lift, the ban. People don't understand that Major League Baseball and the Hall of Fame aren't the same entity. They can operate independently of each other, and they've always had the freedom to. But I don't know. I don't think Pete gets in, and I say that for this reason. Off the field, he wasn't a very good person, and I think on the field, if you didn't play with them, I don't know. I don't know how they feel. I just know that the guys that are perceived as cheaters, the committees have made it clear, the veterans committees that composed of a lot of players, they're never going to vote these guys in. They despise them. And it's made up, the committees are made up of former players and people that were around the game when they were in it. And Pete wasn't a guy who had a lot of friends, I don't think. He wasn't a guy who, I get it, that none of that should matter in many ways because, I do believe that there's a competitive and statistical component that says, of course, he should be in the Hall of Fame. But I go back to the fact that he broke the one rule that every single person in the history of baseball knew about since the White Sox scandal. And it was on, I might have told you this before. Every single clubhouse door from rookie ball to the big leagues has the gambling rule on the front before you walk into the clubhouse. Everyone.
Curt, you played right through the steroid era. You were facing guys that were jacked to the gills for most of your career. As you look, you're not, and I look at you. You're not in the Hall of Fame because there are people who don't like you. That's it. You are, as a player, you are clearly, you're not just above the threshold. You got an aerial view of the threshold, but you're not in because people take exception, to your opinion about this or that or whatever. When you look at the steroid guys, I gotta believe that there are steroid guys that are already in the Hall of Fame, right?
There are.
I don't think this isn't a fairy tale, right?
They
are
absolutely.
So when it comes down to Barry Bonds and A-Rod and Manny Ramirez and these guys who clearly, from an ability basis, resume basis, should be in there, what would you do with them if you were the if you were the king for a day?
Well, it's one of those situations where, and it's probably not fair in that I've always said that I would not vote for someone who cheated, openly, knowingly cheated. And then you start to think about, to what degree do they have to cheat for me to call them a cheater? Is Gaylord Perry cheated every start of his career? I know guys in the Hall of Fame who scuffed the baseball. I don't. I'm on the fence about it. I think that there are a couple guys who should be in regardless because they were Hall of Famers before they cheated. Let's be clear. I'm tired of hearing the guys say doing steroids didn't help me hit the baseball. It absolutely 100% did help you hit the baseball. And the only way the analogy I can use is from what I understand, most guys did it to recover faster. Playing in the hardest schedule in professional sports. On September 1st, if I've got 240 innings, I'm dragging ass, tired, and you're spring training fresh because you've been taking steroids all year, you have an enormous advantage, and it does help you hit the baseball. So don't tell me it doesn't. But I don't know. I honestly, I don't think I'll ever be in a position for my opinion to matter. And a lot of people said that it was case dependent. Like, does McGwire deserve to be in and Bonds deserve to be in? Well, I thought Barry Bonds was a dick, so no, I don't think so. And I liked Mark McGwire. It had nothing to do with one being black and one being white. It was all about the fact that one I thought was a really nice guy and the other guy wasn't. I'm torn between that, but there are guys the Hall of Fame doesn't have the best players to ever play the game all in it. Let's put it that way.
Curt, one more for you here, and I'm going to go a little bit off the board with this question, but have you been following Caitlin Clark and the whole WNBA phenomenon, everything that's
religiously
going on with her?
I'm watching the WNBA because of Caitlin Clark, period. And I got to tell you, another night of highlights of watching Angel Reese get her me bounds, and I'm going to throw up.
Yeah. So what is it with this league? Have you ever seen a situation where this woman is the best thing that could have ever possibly happened, not just for the WNBA, but for women's basketball, for every player in that league? If they're ever going to make any kind of real money, she is the impetus for that. Why does it seem to be that they've got it out for her?
Well, it's very simple. Effing white girl, right? Brittany Griner said it. Like, this is the group of the most racist human beings to ever. I mean, let's go all the way back to Gino Auriemma, the sage of women's college basketball, talking shit about Caitlin before she gets to the NBA, and he turns out to be wrong about everything. The millions of dollars coming the way of other players other than Caitlin Clark is 100% directly related to Caitlin Clark's involvement. And no, Angel Reese, well, now guys are, because Angel Reese is like a DraftKings joke in that you can get odds on whether she misses her first shot every night. And that's turning into a YouTube sensation. It's embarrassing. I've never seen a league try so hard to commit suicide since the USFL. I really haven't. And it's embarrassing, and it's really pathetic. It really honestly is. And anybody pushing that narrative should be ashamed of themselves, because you've got it's hard for me to talk. You've got a group of people who want men to be able to use the women's restrooms while they clearly are trying to appear to fight for women's equality. They should be paid the same. or any of this other stuff. Well, it should be based on the revenue you generate. The WNBA is generating much more revenue. They should be making much more money. I think one of the reasons you're not seeing ownership in the WNBA talk very much because they're reaping the windfall. And I think behind the scenes, they're saying, shut the hell up and play the game because we've never had it so good.
Yeah, it's like they can't stand the prosperity.
Right.
Curt.
But well, no, it's the ultimate cutting off your nose to spite your face, right? Like,
yeah,
they're not just biting the hand that feeds them. They're chewing it off and spitting it out. It's embarrassing. But I want to watch her sink threes from the half court line. I'll do that for a good long time.
Yeah, she's unbelievable. All right, Curt, before you get out of here, tell us a little bit more about the show with your son.
Yeah.
Sounds like good
so
stuff.
I appreciate you asking, Ricky. I have a podcast started. We just did episode 30. It's called The Complete Game. It's on YouTube right now. And we basically, it's just a 15 to 30 minute podcast every Tuesday, Friday, Sunday that we talk about baseball. We talk about purely baseball. And my oldest son, Garrick, is my co-host, and we talk about everything. I've done a lot of stuff around the draft in the last couple episodes. There's a dearth of pitching in the big leagues, and there's a pandemic in Major League Baseball for around velocity, and it's costing tens of hundreds of millions of dollars and health, and it needs to change and be fixed. So anyway, yeah, we do it Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. It's called The Complete Game, and you can catch it on YouTube.
All right, there you have it. Everybody needs to check that out. Always a pleasure to get to talk to you, Curt. We appreciate you. Thank you for making some time for us today.
Love the old school Flyers jersey and the Buccaneers helmet in the background. That's big league, dude.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Take care,
I appreciate that.